إن الحمد لله نحمده ونستعينه ونستغفره ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا ومن سيئات أعمالنا من يهده الله فلا مضل له ومن يضلل فلا هادي له وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله يا أيها الذين آمنوا اتقوا الله حق تقاته ولا تموتن إلا وأنتم مسلمون يا أيها الناس اتقوا ربكم الذي خلقكم من نفس واحدة وخلق منها زوجها وبث منهما رجالا كثيرا ونساء واتقوا الله الذي تساءلون به والأرحام إن الله كان عليكم رقيبا يا أيها الذين آمنوا اتقوا الله وقولوا قولا سديدا يصلح لكم أعمالكم ويغفر لكم ذنوبكم ومن يطع الله ورسوله فقد فاز فوزا عظيما أما بعد فإن خير الكلام كلام الله وخير الهدي هدي محمد صلى الله عليه وسلم وشر الأمور محدثاتها وكل محدثة بدعة وكل بدعة ضلالة وكل ضلالة في النار. As for what precedes, I start off by praising Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the Most High, the All-Able, the one who's allowed us to gather together in a house from the houses of Allah Jalla wa Ala. And we ask Allah Jalla wa Ala to make this gathering a gathering for His sake, where the angels are present, inshaAllah ta'ala, tranquility is there, and the mercy is there. And we ask Allah Jalla wa Ala to make us from those that He mentions to those that are near to Him. Alhamdulillah, we started the book Shurut al-Salati wa Arkanuha wa Wajibatuha, the book that is known as the conditions of the prayer, its pillars and also its obligations. Last week we discussed at the beginning of the class the importance of knowledge. That's what we started with. We spoke about some of the ahadith pertaining to seeking ilm. And then I read out a portion of a book known as Al-Madkhal that was written by Ibn Badran, whereby he discussed some of the issues that somebody faces when he wants to seek knowledge. So it could be the case that somebody tries to seek knowledge, for example, and he seeks knowledge for many years, and he's still at the beginning level of seeking knowledge, and this was due to two main reasons that the Shaykh mentioned in his kitab. The first of them was what? عدم الذكاء الفطري. It was due to the person not having the cognitive capabilities to be able to attain this knowledge. And he said, وَهَذَا لَا كَلَامَ لَنَا فِيهِ. He said, in this we don't have any speech regarding it. وَلَا فِي عِلَاجِهِ. We don't have any speech regarding its solution. And he said the second reason was what? Was due to the person being taught in the wrong way. There being a mistake in the way that the person is seeking this knowledge. And then he gave a number of different advices, and I read that out as well. And some of the advice that he gave was that a person that he starts with the books that are known as the mukhtasarat. And walillah alhamd, Shaykh Mohammed has been teaching you all books that are mukhtasarat, which are books that are small in size but that contain a lot of meaning. And these are the books that people should start with. And then he mentioned that a person, he should move on to a book that is a bit of a higher level, which was the book that is only a little bit higher than that book, before moving on to any books that are at a higher level. Now, and he said when you're studying a book, when you finish studying that book, you should know it to a degree whereby you don't need to return back to it. Now, and he said that the teacher that's teaching it should teach it in a way whereby he doesn't add information that doesn't need to be added in the explanation, nor does he leave off parts that do need to be explained. Now, and we also spoke about murajah. That was the first part of the lesson. Then the second part of the lesson we spoke about.
So you mentioned in the poetry you mentioned regards murajah.
Yeah.
Can you repeat?
Yeah. So the poet, he says, من حاز العلم وذاكره صلحت دنياه وآخرته فأدم للعلم مراجعة فحياة العلم مذاكرته. That's what it is. Do you want me to explain in English or again?
Just a bit slow.
Okay. He says من حاز العلم وذاكره صلحت دنياه وآخرته فأدم للعلم مراجعة فحياة العلم مذاكرته. Now, so we spoke about revision as well. And when you come to a class now, before you actually attend that class, you're supposed to review or try to read up on what the teacher is going to be teaching. And then when you attend the class, you'll be able to understand and focus with the teacher a lot more. Because if the teacher gives you a lot of information and you've never come across this before, it may go over your head. But then after the class as well, you're supposed to spend some time reviewing that class, and that way you've got 3 times that you've reviewed that lesson. And that way it's more likely for knowledge to stick. And you need to all remember that when it comes to seeking knowledge and knowledge in general, you remember that which you memorize and that you repeat multiple times. The scholars of Mauritania, for example, they're known for their strong memory. And it might be biological, but it's mainly due to the fact that they repeat things excessively. So they will, when they're memorizing, for example, a line of poetry, they won't repeat it 10 times and say, I've memorized it. Because you might memorize it for that time frame, but then a couple of weeks down the line, you won't know it. And there was a story, I can't remember exactly the full story, but there was a story whereby there was a man and he kept on repeating that which he was memorizing. And then there was a woman that was nearby, and she could hear this young man repeating and repeating and repeating. She said, just stop. You've got to a stage right now where even I've memorized what you're saying. And then he ignored her and he carried on. And I think he saw her weeks down the line and he said, do you still remember what I was repeating? She said, no. And this is the reason why people repeat excessively. Now, so we moved on to last week. We also discussed the life story of Sheikh Mohammed ibn Abdul Wahhab. We spoke about where he was born. He was born in Uyayna, and the family that he was born into, which is a family of knowledge, and some of the places that he travelled to, such as Medina and Mecca and Al-Basra and Ahsa, and also, he came back to Huraymila, where his father moved to after that. And then we spoke about his travelling to Al-Dir'iyya, which was the town where he found Imam Muhammad ibn Saud, which by the will of Allah Jalla wa Ala allowed the da'wah to spread around the Arabian Peninsula. So we spoke a little bit about that. And then the third part of the lesson, we started on the actual book. So we started with the first condition, which was, does anybody remember what the first condition was? Islam now. So we discussed the first 3 conditions of the book. Al-Islam, wal-aqlu, and al-tamyiz. And we started on the 4th pillar, so inshallah ta'ala, that's what we're going to be carrying on from. طيب. So, the Mu'allif rahimahullah ta'ala, he mentions Raf'ul Hadathi. He mentions Raf'ul Hadathi. I said, when we start on the 4th condition, I said before starting on it, the scholars of the Hanbali madhab, when they're defining tahara, they say, Al-taharatu Raf'ul Hadathi وَمَا فِي مَعْنَاهُ وَزَوَالُ الْخَبَثِ. So they give a definition to al-tahara and purification, and the way that they define it is they say it is رَفْعُ الْحَدَثِ وَمَا فِي مَعْنَاهُ وَزَوَالُ الْخَبَثِ. So رَفْعُ الْحَدَثِ is uplifting ritual impurity. وَمَا فِي مَعْنَاهُ is that which resembles it. وَزَوَالُ الْخَبَثِ is the removal of impurity. So over here, the author is only talking about the beginning part of the definition that the scholars they give for al-tahara. He's only talking about the beginning part of the definition that the scholars they give for al-tahara. And we said that Raf'ul Hadath is uplifting ritual impurity. And al-hadath to naw'an. Al-hadath, there's 2 types. There is that which is considered hadathun akbar, and there is that which is considered hadathun asghar. And hadathun akbar is the hadath, or the hadath that if you get into it, or you get into that state of al-hadath, you have to do ghusl before you are able to pray. So hadathun akbar requires a person to engage in ghusl, and ghusl is a full body wash. It is a full body wash. However, if somebody enters into the state of al-hadathun asghar, he has to then perform wudu to be able to pray. And I said hadath is wasfun yaqumu bil badani yamna'u min sihhati as-salah. I said that hadath is a state that a person that he enters into, that a person's body enters into, and it prevents him from being able to pray in a valid way. It prevents his salah from being valid. So that is what al-hadath is, and that is what Raf'ul Hadath is. Now, so the second part of the definition, which we're going to quickly go through as well, we're not going to go in depth, is وَمَا فِي مَعْنَاهُ, even though it's not part of this book. وَمَا فِي مَعْنَاهُ, What the scholars mean by what resembles Raf'ul Hadath is there are certain things that are part of purification, but they don't actually uplift a person from the state of al-hadath. So for example, if you was to do wudu, that takes you out of the state of hadath, right? Because then you can pray. So you come out of that state. But when you're doing wudu, you only need to wash the body parts one time. So the second time you wash your body, the body parts, so for example, let's say when you start, you wash your hands 3 times, you're gargling the water, you're rinsing your mouth, you're putting up your nose, washing your face, you're only supposed to do all of these actions once. This is what is obligatory. The sunnah is that you do it 3 times. So the second time or the third time, when you're washing the body parts, this wouldn't be considered Raf'ul Hadath, because you're no longer removing yourself from the state of al-hadath. You're not uplifting that state any longer. What you're doing is something outside of that, but resembles that. And that's what the scholars they mean by وَمَا فِي مَعْنَاهُ. And also, for example, let's say somebody has already got wudu, and he wants to follow the sunnah of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, which is making wudu for all the salahs, right? This person is now engaging in an act of tahara, but that act of tahara isn't uplifting himself from the state of al-hadath, but rather it resembles the state of al-hadath. And then the last part of the definition is zawal al-khabath, where somebody is removing impurities, and we're going to get into that because that's the condition that comes after this one. Now, so the author rahimahullah ta'ala, he says الشرط الرابع رفع الحدث is the uplifting of al-hadath. وهو الوضوء المعروف, and it is the well-known wudu or the well-known ablution. وموجبه الحدث, and that which obliges it is al-hadath. So if somebody falls into al-hadath or goes into that state of al-hadath, it obliges that a person has to do wudu. However, the hadath that is being spoken about over here, even though he didn't specify it, is the minor hadath. Because the major hadath will require you to do al-ghusl, it will require you to wash your full body. وَشُرُوطُهُ عَشَرَةٌ, and its conditions are 10. So before we move on, so far we're discussing the conditions of the salah. But now he's going to mention 10 conditions, and these conditions are specific to the wudu. They are no longer the conditions of the salah. So he's gone into the condition, the 4th condition from the condition of the salah, which is uplifting ritual impurity, and within it he mentions the 10 conditions of the wudu. So the first condition that he mentions was al-Islam. Al-Islam. And this condition, we've already come across it, but the first condition from the conditions of the salah. And as the author he mentioned, that if a person is not a Muslim, none of his actions will be accepted from him, no matter what action that he does. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he says, مَا كَانَ لِلْمُشْرِكِينَ أَن يَعْمُرُوا مَسَاجِدَ اللَّهِ شَاهِدِينَ عَلَى أَنفُسِهِمْ بِالْكُفْرِ. It is not for the polytheists that they maintain the houses of Allah whilst they're witnessing upon themselves disbelief. أُولَٰئِكَ حَبِطَتْ أَعْمَالُهُمْ, for those their actions are in vain. So this is the ayah that he mentioned in this condition when it was the first condition from the conditions of the Salah book. So this ayah, Allah says that their actions are in vain for disbelievers, meaning none of their actions will be accepted from them. So this shows that any action that a person does in Islam, a condition for it is that he has to be Muslim. If not, it will not be accepted from him. And the wudu is from the actions of Islam. It's from the ibadat within the religion. The second condition, which we've already covered as well, was al-aql. And I said al-aql is sanity. And we said sanity also entails or encompasses a person who has intoxicated himself as well. So if somebody loses his sanity, or whether he intoxicates himself, both of these people, their salah will not be accepted from them, because of the hadith of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, where he said, رُفِعَ الْقَلَمُ أَنْ ثَلَاثٍ. He said that the pen has been lifted from 3. What was the 3 people? Does anybody remember? Now, was that in English?
The person that's asleep until the wake up.
Till the wakes up.
And then the majnoon, the person that's
Sorry,
insane,
no.
at Tanafir. And then the person that's a saqir,
Very good. So all 3 of those people. So they're the 3 people that the hadith mentions. And then we moved on to the third condition, which we already discussed last week ago, which was at-tamyiz, which was when a child hits the age of 7 years old. When a child hits the age of 7 years old, this is when we can expect from a child to be able to come with the intention. So before that age, the child is too young to differentiate what's right from what's wrong, what's good from what's bad. So we can't expect this child to be able to come with the intention of the prayer, and because of that they're not rewarded. Some of the scholars, they do say, even though I did mention this last week, they say that 7 years old isn't like the age. It can change. It is the age that's been given, like it could be the case that a child, he hits the age of التمييز قبل ذلك, before that. Because you'll find some kids at the age of 5 and 6 years old, and they're able to differentiate between things. And you find that some it takes them a little bit longer, and it might take up to the age of 8. Like in the general rule is 7, and some of the scholars, they do say it has to be 7, but there's a difference of opinion, and the more correct opinion would be that it ranges, but the average would be about 7. Obviously the hadith that was mentioned by the Prophet ﷺ regarding the Salah, he said he ordered them to pray when they're at the age of 7. مُرُوا أَبْنَاءَكُمْ بِالصَّلَاةِ لِسَبْعٍ. And this is where they got that particular number from, because before that age we don't command them. We also discussed last week as well, we said if a person has reached the age of 8, 9, or even 10, where the parent is supposed to actually discipline the child for him to pray, he's still not sinful for not praying. It is something that the child is supposed to be disciplined towards, like he's not sinful because he hasn't reached the age of puberty. As mentioned in the hadith before that, which was, the pen has been lifted from 3 types of people, and one of them is a person who has not reached the age of puberty, has not reached the age of puberty. Now, so those 3 conditions we already covered it. So let's move on to the 4th one now. It's the 4th condition from the conditions of the wudu. وَالنِّيَّةُ وَاسْتِصْحَابُ حُكْمِهَا. So an-niyyah. An-niyyah is the intention. And the Prophet ﷺ, he says in a hadith that was narrated by Umar radiallahu anhu, he says, إِنَّمَا الْأَعْمَالُ بِالنِّيَّاتِ. Verily actions are by their intentions. And you find that a lot of the books of hadith, they start with this particular hadith. If you have come across the book that is known as Umdatul Ahkam, that was authored by Shaykh Abdul Ghani al-Maqdisi, he starts his book with this hadith as well, I think. You also find the beginning of Al-Mutoon Al-ilmiyya, it is the first hadith. One of the scholars, he says that إِنَّمَا الْأَعْمَالُ بِالنِّيَّاتِ. What it actually means is إِنَّمَا صِحَّةُ الْأَعْمَالِ بِالنِّيَّاتِ. Verily the validity of an action is by its intention. Meaning if you don't come with the intention of that particular prayer, your salah will not be accepted. It's to do with as-sihha, validity, and fasad, and something being invalid. It's to do with the validity and the invalidity. And because of that, if a person does an action and he hasn't come with the intention, his action will not be accepted. So this is the proof for the niyyah being a condition from the conditions of the wudu. The author, he moves on to say, he says, وَاسْتِصْحَابُ حُكْمِهَا, and accompanying its ruling. And then he explains what he means by this. And this is the next condition, the 5th one. He says, بِأَلَّا يَنْوِيَ قَطْعَهَا حَتَّى تَتِمَّ طَهَارَتُهُ. بِأَلَّا يَنْوِيَ قَطْعَهَا حَتَّى تَتِمُّ طَهَارَتُهُ. What is meant by accompanying its ruling is that a person, he doesn't stop his intention until he completes his act of purification. Until he completes the act of purification. So for example, if somebody is praying the Salah, and he starts his intention by intending to pray the Salah, and halfway through the Salah, something pops up, and he thinks, right, I'm going to stop my Salah in a few seconds, and inshallah later on I'll re-pray it again. But then changes his mind a few seconds later. Changes his mind, let's say a minute later or so. Is this person's salah going to be accepted from him? So let's say the person's praying, he started dhuhr, he came with the intention, while he was in the second rak'ah, something popped up and he's like, I'm going to break my salah, I'm going to stop it in a few seconds. Well, I'm just going to wait for the imam to go down to sujood. But then, once he gets to sujood, he's like, I want to finish it off. Is that person's salah accepted? No, it's not, because this person, his intention, he had changed during the salah. That intention didn't prolong with him from the beginning all the way to the end, because he changed it during the salah. And this was the condition of the author he mentions over here. Now, then, before we move on as well, a shart, a condition, we spoke about it last week. A shart is ما يلزم من عدمه العدم ولا يلزم من وجوده الوجود. That which its absence, it necessitates the absence of the action. And its presence doesn't necessitate the presence of the action. We also said that a condition of the salah it has to precede the action. I don't know if I said this actually, but the condition of the salah, it has to come before the action. And not only does it have to precede the action, but it has to be there during the duration of that particular ibadah or that particular action. It is not enough that a person comes with the condition before the salah, but it has to be there during the salah, and it has to be there during the wudu, and during any act of worship. The author then moves on to the next condition, which is وانقطاع موجب. وانقطاع موجب. And انقطاع موجب is stopping anything that causes a person to fall back into the state of al-hadith. Stopping anything that causes a person to fall back into the state of al-hadith. فمثلا, if you are making wudu whilst you are still urinating, which would be very strange to do anyway. If somebody is doing this, then his wudu will not count. Why? Because he keeps on entering back into the state of al-hadith. And the Prophet ﷺ, he says in a hadith that has been authentically attributed to him, he says, لا يقبل الله صلاة أحدكم إذا أحدث حتى يتوضأ. That Allah Jalla wa Ala, He does not accept a salah from any one amongst you if he falls into al-hadath حتى يتوضأ, until he makes wudu. And the hadath that is speaking about over here, is being spoken about over here, is obviously the hadath al-asghar, the minor hadath. Because the major hadath, it would cause a person to have to do al-ghusl. Now, so انقطاع موجب. So anything that would cause you to break your wudu, you have to stop. You have to stop that particular action whilst doing the wudu, or else your wudu will not be correct because you haven't come with a condition which is stopping and removing anything that causes you to fall back into the state of al-hadith. The next condition that the author he mentions is the condition of al-istinja'u wal-istijmar. The condition of al-istinja'u wal-istijmar. And al-istinja'u and al-istijmar is cleaning the private parts after somebody uses the toilet. And the difference between the two is al-istinja is when you do it with water. And al-istijmar is when you do it with, a rock or paper or, a tissue, such as in our time. But in the past they would use rocks. A lot more common, that would be a lot more common. So these are some of the differences between al-istinja and al-istijmar. It is said in a hadith that was narrated by Anas radiallahu anhu that النبي صلى الله عليه كان النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم يقضي حاجته فأنطلق أنا وغلام نحوي بإداوة من ماء وعنزة فيستنجي بالماء. So this is a hadith that was narrated by the Prophet صلى الله عليه وسلم, where Anas رضي الله عنه, he would help the Prophet صلى الله عليه وسلم by carrying for him water in a particular container when he's going to relieve himself. And this shows us that al-istinja is something that is actually part of the religion that we're supposed to do. In another hadith, the Prophet ﷺ, he says, and this is regarding istijmar, he says, Man istajmara falyutir. And whoever does istijmar, then let him do it witr, let him do it 3, 5, 7, 9 times. Let him do it an odd number of times. Let him do it an odd number of times. And also you can see from this hadith, and there's many other hadiths that show us, the mashru'iyya, or that istijmar and istinja are actually part of the religion. The question now arises, which a lot of people they misunderstand when it comes to this condition, is some people they think that you need to do istinja and istijmar for every single salah, before you do every single wudu. This is not the case. You only do istinja and istijmar after a person uses the toilet and he has impurities on his private parts. This is a time where somebody has to do istinja and istijmar. He doesn't need to do istinja and istijmar for every single time that the person is doing wudu. So it's not a condition from the conditions of doing in all scenarios. It is a condition whereby a person has used the toilet and wants to perform wudu. Shaykh Abdalla al-Shu'aib is one of the scholars. He mentions that the reason why it's a condition, that istijmar is a condition, and a person can't, leave the toilet and then just do wudu and then come back and do istijmar after that, is because we've never seen or we've never heard of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. We've never heard of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam in any hadith. We've never come across any proof that there was a scenario where he had done istinja. That he used the toilet and he did wudu without doing istinja or istijmar. So he would always do it in this order. And he said, from this, what we can gather is what? That it is a condition for somebody to do the wudu. And he also mentioned that in the ayah where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu idha qumtum ila as-salah, O you who believe, if you were to stand in prayer, if you wanted to make the intention to stand in prayer, فَاغْسِلُوا وُجُوهَكُمْ وَأَيْدِيَكُمْ, wash your faces and your hands. فَاغْسِلُوا وُجُوهَكُمْ وَأَيْدِيَكُمْ إِلَى الْمَرَافِقِ, unto your elbows, وَامْسَحُوا بِرُؤُوسِكُمْ وَأَرْجُلَكُمْ إِلَى الْكَعْبَيْنِ. And then after that, later on, in the ayah, Allah Jalla wa Ala, He talks about if somebody was to go to Al-Gha'ib, and Al-Gha'ib is whereby somebody relieves himself. And he's saying if somebody goes to the Gha'ib and he doesn't find water, then he needs to be tayammum. And he says from this what we can gather is if somebody goes to the Gha'ib, I mean somebody has gone to a place and he has relieved himself. In the past, what they used to consider a Gha'ib is a place that is munkhafid, somewhere that is a low ground. They would call that a Gha'ib. And they would go there and they would relieve themselves there. So in the past, they never used to have toilets and things of that nature, so they would go outside and they'd go to a place where it's a bit of a low line so that they can relieve themselves, and that place is called Gha'ib. So if somebody was to go to the Gha'ib and he doesn't find water, then he needs to be tayammum. And he said from this order, he says that if you go to the Gha'ib, then you look for water, then you do tayammum. He's saying if somebody goes to the Gha'ib, it's obligatory for him to do istinja and istijmar anyway. And because of that, he's saying because the order has been mentioned over here like this, it shows that it's a condition in the conditions of the wudu. Does that make sense? No. So this is some of the points that Shaykh al-Islam al-Shura'i mentioned regarding that. So al-istijmar as well, another point is that a person, he has to carry on doing it until he removes the impurity that was in his private parts, or on his private parts. It is not enough that he does it once or twice if he hasn't cleaned the place. He has to do it until the place or the mahal is clean. And it's the sunnah that the person does it an odd number of times. As the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, he said, من اشتكمر في البيت. نعم.
معذرة أحسن الله إليك، هل يجوز الأسئلة خلف الدرس أو أفضل بعد الدرس؟
الأحسن بعد الدرس، ولكن إن كان السؤال متعلق بما أقوله لا بأس.
يتعلق بما تقول.
طيب تفضل.
الرسول صلى الله عليه وسلم قال فليوتر حتى بالماء، بمعنى حتى بالماء؟
لا قال من استجمر فليوتر. هذا خاص بالاستجمار. نعم. So what the brother just asked us, so I say in English, is he was asking about doing it 3 times. He said, is that specific to doing istinja or istijmar or both of them? And I said it's specific to the istijmar because in the hadith the Prophet says whoever does istijmar, then let him do it 3 times. No.
Also, the example you just give about going to the qa'ib, and then if not finding water, you have to do tayammum.
No.
Is it as well, he doesn't find anything to do istijmar with as well? So
Definitely.
So,
No. Sorry. He said that if somebody goes to the qa'ib and he doesn't find water, this is talking about wudu. It's not talking about istijmar or istijmar. So what we're saying is that the act of actually going to the qa'ib, it indicates that he's already done istinja or istijmar, one of them. But it's saying if he doesn't find water, it's given a scenario, then he should do tayammum. That's in the ayah. So we're saying because of that, we're saying whenever somebody goes to the toilet, he always does istinja and istijmar, and then if he can't find water, he needs to do wudu. It shows that there's this particular order, and it shows it's a condition. So the istijmar and istinja are a condition from the conditions of the wudu. Does that make sense? No. So the next condition is the condition of طهورية ماء وإباحته. So طهورية ماء, water that is being used has to be pure. If the water that is being used is not considered pure, then you are not allowed to use it for wudu, and your wudu will be invalid because it's a condition from the conditions of the prayer. And what are we talking about when we say purity of water? It could be in certain scenarios that the water that you are using is either tahir or it's either najis. So water, some of the scholars they say there's 2 types, but the Hanabila say there's 3 types. There is water that is considered tahur. Tahur is water that is tahirun li nafsihi wa tahirun li ghayrihi. So waters are 3 types here. water that is considered طاهر لنفسه, meaning it's طاهر, it's pure within itself, مطهر لغيره, and it purifies other things. So it's pure within itself and it purifies other things. And they consider this, the scholars of the Hanbali, they consider this to be tahur. And then they say that there is tahir, which is another level, which is water that is tahir al-nafsi, it's pure within itself, but you can't use it to purify other things. And the final type is najis, and that's water that it's not tahir, it's impure within itself, and you can't use it to purify other things. Now, some scholars say there's only two types. There's only that which you can use to purify other things, and that which is najis. Like ala kulli hal. Water, if three things change within the water, three characteristics of the water change, then you are no longer able to classify that water as pure water. And this is something that there is an ijma', there's a scholarly consensus. And for those that don't know, an ijma' is from the adilla al-shar'iyya, it's from the proofs in the religion. It's like the Quran and the Sunnah. So for example, if you've got like a big, let's say we have a pool of water, and that water, it changes colour due to some impurity entering into it. This water would no longer be considered pure water. It will be no longer considered pure water. So when you do wudu, I don't want to get into the ins and outs of the different mas'ala regarding that, because inshallah we'll cover that in the future if we start with the fiqh book, is that if water, if it is not pure, your wudu will not be valid because you haven't met the condition of using pure water. Simple. Now, the author, he then says, وَإِبَاحَتُهُ, and it's also being permissible and lawful. And this condition is a condition that there's a big difference in opinion upon. The scholars, they differ regarding this one heavily. You'll find, for example, Shaykh ibn Baz, I think he's of the view that this is a condition. Shaykh ibn Uthaymeen, he's of the view that this isn't a condition. And it all goes back to a particular mas'ala which we're going to go over inshallah ta'ala. So, why do some of the scholars consider this a condition and some they don't? Because Allah Jalla wa Ala, He wants us to do wudu with water, right? That's what the deen wants us to do, right? But at the same time, we have been prohibited from robbing and taking other people's wealth. So when we say that the water has to be permissible, what we're referring to it is that it's not water that has been stolen. It is water that is lawful for you to use. It's your water. Now, if somebody, he robs or he takes somebody else's water and he does wudu with it, does his salah, does his wudu get accepted or not? This is where the difference of opinion is. But the opinion that the author is upon, and the opinion that's within the Hanbali method as well, and that Shaykh ibn Baz and other than them are upon, is this opinion whereby the person's salah will not be accepted. And the reasoning for this is because how can we do something that is going to draw us closer to Allah Jalla wa Ala by sin? كيف نتقرب إلى الله? How do we draw closer to Allah through a sin? And another reason that they use as well is the hadith of Aisha radiallahu anha, whereby she says, من أحدث في أمرنا هذا ما ليس منه فهو رجل. Whoever innovates in this affair of ours, that which is not from it, will be rejected from him. Because they're saying, you are now doing wudu in a way that isn't part of the religion. The religion is for you to do wudu with lawful water that you earn, that you own. But if you go and rob somebody else's water, you are now using water that you don't own, and this shows that you're doing this act of worship in a way that the religion did not prescribe. And therefore, your action will be rejected from you, and because of that your wudu will not be valid. Everybody with me? Now, so this is some of the reasons that they use. The other camp, the ones that say it is allowed, they say that because even though there's a difference between the water being haram and your wudu being valid, and they say these are two separate issues and they don't affect one another. We're not going to go into the ins and outs. There are many issues that are similar to this issue, and it stems off the same reason. So for example, there's the well-known issue of praying in a place that you have robbed. For example, if you pray a salah in a place that they say a salat fil ard al-maqsura, as they say in Arabic, praying in a place that you have burgled into or that you've robbed. It's the same issue because they're saying that you being there is not lawful for you. And the fact that you're praying there is part of you, being there, you praying there is within, it's you praying in that place. It's part of you staying there, which is haram for you anyway. It's part of that. But the scholars, they differ regarding that, same way they differ regarding this. Another example of this would be somebody that is praying with silk and is covering the whole of itself. So all of these issues, they go back to that same principle, and whoever says that whoever says that permissibility of water is a condition in the conditions of the salah will also say that you cannot pray wearing silk. The salah will, no, they also say you can't pray wearing silk, but they will also say that your salah will not be valid wearing silk, and they will also say that you praying in a place that you don't own, that you've burgled into, that you've robbed, is also not allowed. And the other camp will say the opposite in all three scenarios. Now, does that make sense?
Will that make any sin that you're doing while praying invalidate your prayer?
No. So they're saying, so what it is, right now, you've been commanded to not do one thing. That thing that you've been commanded not to do, they're saying you're doing something else that you're not commanded to do that is connected to your prayer.
Oh, connected. No.
And these guys are saying no, there is not connection. So some are making a connection, some are saying there's infiqaq al-jihah, they're saying that there's two ways to look at it, some are saying no, it's one. And that's where the difference is. Does that make sense?
Makes sense.
No, but we'll get into it in more depth inshallah in the future. طيب. So that's why the author, but anyway, you understand the reasoning behind the author. Why did he say, why is he following this opinion? Because of that hadith of Aisha, and because of, saying how can you draw closer to Allah Jalla wa Ala by doing a sin. Right? طيب. Okay, moving on from that point. Let's move on to the next condition. So what condition were we on? We was on... No, on test. طيب. So the next condition after that is وَإِزَالَةُ مَا يَمْنَعُ وُصُولَهُ إِلَى الْبَشَرَةِ, and removing anything that prevents the water from reaching the skin. And this could be things like paint. If you have paint, let's say you're a painter, and the paint goes onto your skin and it prevents the water from reaching your skin, then you have to remove this. For women, for example, when they use nail polish, nail polish, whatever it's called, that also prevents the water from reaching your skin. And this will also be a condition from the conditions of the wudu that haven't been met unless they remove it. وَدُخُولُ الْوَقْتِ عَلَى مَنْ حَدَثُهُ دَائِمٌ لِفَضْلِهِ. And this is the final condition from the conditions of the wudu. And this condition is talking about a person who is in a constant state of impurity. He's in a constant state of impurity. This might be due to the fact that, let's say there's a woman and she's on her menstrual cycle, and the blood doesn't stop within the well-known period where it usually stops, which is usually around 6 to 7 days, or depending on the woman. But let's say a woman, she has blood that is still coming out after that period, and it goes on for like the whole month or the majority of the month. This blood outside of that normal period would be considered hadath, and it would be somebody that's in a perpetual or constant state of a hadath, of impurity, of literal impurity. Another example would be, let's say somebody who's unable to hold his gas, and he keeps on passing gas. This person is also in a constant state of impurity. Some people might have stomach issues, whereby they pass gas every few minutes, or let's say every half a minute. This person is in a constant state of literal impurity. Another example is some people, what they have is when they go to the toilet, they have something known as salisul bawl, which is whereby they drip after they go to the toilet, the urine carries on dripping. All of these people, they are in a constant state of literal impurity. So how does this person now, what is this person's condition for this for the wudu? He has another condition. His condition is that he makes wudu at the beginning time of every salah. At the beginning time of every salah. And this is enough for him. And he prays for example, let's say he wants to pray dhuhr, if he makes wudu at the time of dhuhr, he can pray dhuhr, and he can also pray the sunnahs that come after that. But as soon as asr comes in, he has to make wudu again. And this is what uplifts his hadith. This understanding has been, it was deducted from a hadith that the Prophet ﷺ, he said to one of the female companions, whereby she came up to him and she said to him, I have an issue whereby my period, it goes past the normal time frame. And then at the end of the hadith, the Prophet ﷺ, he said to her, تَوَضَّئِي لِكُلِّ صَلَاتِ. He said, make wudu for every single salah. And we can use this for anybody who has the same issue whereby he is in a constant state of ritual impurity now. طيب. So alhamdulillah, we finished the 10 conditions of the wudu. Does anybody have any questions for me? No questions,
If someone, the last condition, if someone wants to do nafil without a fard, will they have to do wudu for that specifically, or the wudu from the beginning of the time of prayer makes up for it?
They don't have to do it, because the author, he says, وَدُخُولُ الْوَقْتِ عَلَى مَنْ حَدَثُهُ دَائِمٌ لِلْفَرْضِ, for the fard.
Only
So,
for the
for
fard.
the fard. So as soon as, for the nafil, that wudu that he's done for the fard, it lasts him until the next salah.
Even if it's, for example, qiyam al-layl.
No, because that's if he does it for Isha. Yeah, no.
Okay. Barakallah.
Okay, so we move on to, so we complete the conditions of the wudu. Now the author has moved on to talking about the furood of the wudu. The furood. And what are the furood? The furood are the same as the obligations. It means obligations. Or wajibat. You can also say wajibat. So it's obligations. وَأَمَّا فُرُوضُهُ فَسِتَّةٌ. And as for its furood or its obligations, then they are 6. غسل الوجه, washing the face. ومنه المضمضة والاستنشاق, and from it is rinsing the mouth, والاستنشاق, and taking in water through the nose. وحده طولا, and its boundaries in terms of length is من منابت الشعر الرأس, is from where the hair starts on a person's head. Where the hair starts on a person's head. And obviously we're referring to somebody, where a normal person's hair starts. If somebody has lost his hair, for example, he doesn't have to start from all the way back there, or if somebody's hair ends here. We're talking about the average person now. طيب, it says إلى الذقن, all the way until the chin. So they're saying that the length of the face, it starts from where the hair starts all the way down to the chin. This is the length of the face. وعرضا, and the width of the face is إلى فروع الأذنين, meaning it starts from one ear to the other ear. From one ear to the other ear. وغسل اليدين إلى المرفقين, and washing the hands all the way to the elbows, including the elbows. ومسح جميع الرأس, and wiping the whole head. ومنه الأذنان, and from it is the ears. وغسل الرجلين, and washing the feet إلى الكعبين, until the ankles. والترتيب, and order. والموالاة, whereby you don't leave a particular action from the actions of the wudu for a long period of time. We'll get into that inshallah ta'ala. Now, والدليل قوله تعالى يا أيها الذين آمنوا إذا قمتم إلى الصلاة فاغسلوا وجوهكم وأيديكم إلى المرافق وامسحوا برؤوسكم وأرجلكم إلى الكعبين. And the proof of this is the speech of Allah Ta'ala, where He says يا أيها الذين آمنوا, O you who believe, إذا قمتم إلى الصلاة, if you rise for the prayer, فاغسلوا وجوهكم وأيديكم إلى المرافق, wash your faces and your hands all the way until your elbows, including your elbows. وامسحوا برؤوسكم وأرجلكم إلى الكعبين, and wipe over your heads, وأرجلكم, and also your feet إلى الكعبين. Now, so before we move on, the Mu'allif rahimahullah ta'ala, he mentions 6 obligations that are from the obligations of the wudu. Anything that is outside of these obligations is not something that you must do during the wudu. It is something that you should do. It might be a sunnah, but it's not an obligation. And one of the well-known sunnahs that we always do before we start the wudu is that we wash our hands 3 times. This is not from the obligations of the wudu, and if somebody was to skip this, his wudu will still be considered sahih, it will still be considered correct. Now, the wajh. The author, he spoke about the wajh, and he started off by talking about its length and its width. Its length and its width. So its length, it starts from where the hair starts and it goes down to the chin. If a person has facial hair, for example, then he has to wash the facial hair as well. If his facial hair is khafif, it's thin, then he has to allow the water to go underneath the facial hair so it touches the skin. So it touches the skin. However, if his beard is thick, then it is not a must that the water it touches the skin, because it's going to be difficult due to the thickness of the hair. But it's from the sunnah that it is something that is known as at-takhleel. And at-takhleel is, there's multiple ways to do it, but one of the ways is that he gets his fingers, if he has a thick beard, and he puts it inside his beard like this, and he goes down like that. He goes inside of the beard so he can touch the skin, and he goes in with the top of his fingers. Now, So this is known as a taqlid, and this is from the sunnah, it's not an obligation. This is for the person who has a takbir. A person who hasn't got a takbir, he needs to let that water reach the skin. When it comes to the ears, Shaykh al-Islam ibn Taymiyyah, he says from the udhun ila al-udhun, from the ear to the udhun, is referring to يعني به من وتد الأذن. What is being referred to is from the watad of the udhun, and this is basically the watad. I forgot the name of it in English again. I think it is. Does anybody know the name of this part here? It's not the earlobe. What?
The earlobe.
No, not the earlobe. This part here that sticks out.
Yeah.
Yeah, the little. Well, forgot the name of it. But yeah, from that part all the way to the other part, to the other ear, that exact part is basically where your ear starts. So widthwise, it's where your ear starts. So he's saying anything from there to there is considered part of the face. Now, the alid, which is basically the hair that comes out of a male's face after his ear, there's a line between the ear and actually that facial or that beard hair where it starts. That line between where no hair grows, that is also considered from the face, so a person needs to wash that as well when he's performing the wudu. Now, does that make sense? Regarding the next pillar, so the face was the first one. Actually, before we move on from the face is the mouth and also the nose. So washing the mouth and the nose is also an obligation. Why is it an obligation? Because it's part of the face. So the eye encompasses it when it's talking about the face. And if you look at the ahadith of the Prophet ﷺ when he was doing wudu, you will find in every single one of them that he gargled water and he put it in his mouth and he put it inside of his nose. This is something that he will always do. So al-madmadatu wal-istinshaqu, which we've already discussed, is a part of washing the face. And it's encompassed within this ayah. The pillar after that, which is washing the hands all the way to the elbows, remember, the ayah it says وَأَيْدِيَكُمْ. So you have to wash the hands. And one of the big mistakes that a lot of people they fall into when they're doing wudu is they don't wash their hands. So they might wash from the wrists all the way to their elbows. Like you must wash your hand because the hand is what has been mentioned in the ayah for you to wash all the way to your elbow, including your elbow. Then the third pillar is the pillar of wiping the head. When you're wiping the head, very simple, you wipe all of your head. You start from the beginning of the head where your hair starts, and you take with both of your hands and you take it all the way back to where your hair ends, and you reverse and do the same thing backwards, and you wipe your head like one way and then the other way as well. Now, moving on to the next one. The next one was the pillar of washing the feet. Actually, before we move on to washing the feet, the third pillar. In a hadith, the Prophet ﷺ, he says, Al-udhunani min al-ras. He says that the ears, they are from the head. Al-udhunan min al-ras. So when you wipe the head, you have to also wipe the ears. And this is part of wiping the head. Because it's a hadith of the Prophet ﷺ, he said, Al-udhunan min al-ras. And then the final one is washing the feet. And you have to wash the feet all the way up to your ankles. And actually from the sunnah is to go up and to even wash parts of your shin, as there's many hadith regarding that. Now these are the four pillars, the four obligations that the author started off, but we said there were 6. So the next one after that is at-tartib. It is the order that we follow. We follow this order for 2 reasons, or maybe more, but these are 2 reasons I'm going to mention. The first one of them is that the Prophet, Allah, when he was mentioning all of these different obligations, he says, يَا أَيُّهَا الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا إِذَا قُمْتُمْ إِلَى الصَّلَاةِ فَاغْسِلُوا وُجُوهَكُمْ وَأَيْدِيَكُمْ إِلَى الْمَرَافِقِ. He says, wash, فَاغْسِلُوا وُجُوهَكُمْ, your faces, وَأَيْدِيَكُمْ, and your hands, إِلَى الْمَرَافِقِ, to the elbows. If you look at it from a nahwa perspective, those who've said a little bit of nahwa, all wujuhakum, your faces, this word is considered mansub. It's in a state that is known as mansub. Why? And from the signs of it, it has a fatha. وَأَيْدِيَكُمْ, wujuhakum, see the fatha, wujuhakum, وَأَيْدِيَكُم, there's a fatha there again. This is for washing the face and also washing the hands and the elbows. Then Allah Jalla wa Ala says, وَامْسَحُوا بِرُؤُوسِكُمْ. He mentions then wiping of the head. And wiping of the head, in terms of the nahwa, it's in the position of al-khafd or al-jar, depending on what school of thought you will follow in nahwa. It has a kasra. وَامْسَحُوا بِرُؤُوسِكُمْ. And then Allah will say after this, وَأَرْجُلَكُمْ. And then he goes back to the fatha. This might be a little bit confusing to people, but just to break it down, the mansubat, which are all the words that have a fatha in it, in Arabic you're supposed to mention them together. You're supposed to mention them together. So what should have been said was, يا أيها الذين آمنوا إذا قمتم إلى الصلاة فاغسلوا وجوهكم, wash your faces, وأيديكم in your hands, إلى المرافق, up to your elbows, and then وأرجلكم. But what Allah actually did was He put وأرجلكم after mentioning wiping over the head. And there is no benefit to this except that it benefits order. So we can benefit from this particular lack of grouping the mansubat together is that we have to follow that particular order when we're doing the acts of the wudu. And from there what we can benefit from it is that tartib or order is an obligation from the obligations of the salah. Also, the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he says in a hadith, نبدأ بما بدأ الله به. In the book, the author actually says, ابدأوا بما بدأ الله به. And I think this hadith is the hadith that has been mentioned in Nisa'i, but the hadith that is stronger in terms of its authenticity is the hadith that we find in Sahih Muslim, whereby the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he said, نبدأ بما بدأ الله به. We will start with that which Allah Jalla wa Ala started with. In this particular hadith, it took place in the scenario where the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam was going to Safa and Al-Marwa, and in the Quran, what does Allah start with? He starts with the Safa. And by the way, Safa, for those that don't know, you perform an Umrah and you perform a Hajj. These are the two mountains that people go forth and back between to complete their pilgrimage. So Allah Jalla wa Ala in the Quran, He started with Safa. He says, إِنَّ الصَّفَا وَالْمَرْوَةَ مِنْ شَعَائِرِ اللَّهِ. And Allah says we start with that which Allah started with, and this is the hadith that the author he used to prove that we have to follow the order. Now, then he moves on to the next obligation. And the next obligation after that is al-muwala. So I didn't speak about al-muwala in depth. Al-muwala is that there isn't a long cut between the actions of the wudu. There isn't a long period that goes by from when you're doing one action of the wudu to the other action of the wudu. Let's say you go to the masjid and you're performing wudu. You wash your hands, you wash your mouth and your nose, you start washing your face, and after you finish washing your face, you have a conversation with somebody in the wudu area. 5 to 10 minutes come by. Can you carry on with wudu? 2 minutes go by. Can you carry with wudu? So the way that we'd be able to give it a time frame is by saying that if the body part that you was washing, it becomes dry. If that body part becomes dry, then that means you have not stuck to this obligation of al-muwala. So you have to wash the other body part before the next body part before the first body part turns dry. Now, is everybody with me there? So this is, you've got a question?
What if someone's doing wudu in a very hot country, currently doing whatever, but it's a very hot country, and doing it outside, for example,
No.
so it dries quickly?
It's true, it might take a little bit longer, it might be a little bit faster. Like that's the condition that they usually give, so it's best to just stick to it, just to stay safe. Because you can't go wrong if you do it again. Does that make sense? You can go wrong if you don't. Now, so the author, rahimahullah ta'ala, gives a proof of this. I mean, the proof that he gives is the hadith of Sahib al-Lum'ah. The hadith of Sahib al-Lum'ah. Sahib al-Lum'ah is a hadith that is talking about the person that has spots with no water on it. So he says, وَالدَّلِيلُ التَّرْتِيبِ. That's what وَالدَّلِيلُ التَّرْتِيبِ. He says, وَالدَّلِيلُ التَّرْتِيبِ. And the proof of the tartib is the hadith إِبْدَأُوا بِمَا بَدَأَ اللَّهُ بِهِ. Start with that which Allah Jalla wa Ala started with. And I said that this hadith, the more authentic one, is the one that you find in Muslim, whereby the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, he said, نَبْدَأُوا بِمَا بَدَأَ اللَّهُ بِهِ. And he's talking about when they were about to start as-Safa wal-Marwa. وَالدَّلِيلُ الْمُوَالَةِ is the proof for al-Muwala. Hadith Sahib al-Lum'ah is the hadith of the person who had that spot where the water did not reach. عن النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم, relates from the Prophet صلى الله عليه وسلم, أنه لما رأى رجلا في قدمه لمعة قدر الدرهم لم يصبها الماء أمره بالإعادة. So the Prophet صلى الله عليه وسلم, when he saw a man في قدمه, on his foot, لمعة, a space or a spot, قدر الدرهم, that was the size of a dirham. And a dirham is a currency that they used to use in the past, which is a currency from silver. It's a small little coin. He says, قدر الدرهم, this spot that was on the person's leg, it was only the size of a dirham that the water never reached. Let me see how the water never reached. أمره بالإعادة. He commanded him to repeat the wudu. How is this hadith a proof that wala is an obligation from the obligation of wudu? Can somebody figure it out? Okay, so explain. Why is that a proof?
Why is that a proof that you have to have brother? So okay, so let me repeat the hadith because I want somebody to me that I'm trying to listen. The Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, he saw a man. The wudu had not reached one part of the person's foot. So meaning there was a part of the foot that was dry, and you could tell it was dry. Meaning that there was no water on it from the get-go. So for example, let's say somebody is in the desert or something and he washes his foot. For those that have lived in third world countries, even though your foot's dry now, it won't look the same as that part that the water never reached because there might be more dust on it. So there was a part of the foot that the Prophet ﷺ saw that there was no water on. He commanded this person to repeat the wudu. How is this a proof that al-muwala is an obligation from the obligation of the wudu? Any agree?
Otherwise, he would have asked him to put water on that spot to fulfill his wudu.
That's what it is. If it wasn't an obligation, he would have just said, wash that little part. This is the last part of the wudu, right? He would have told him to wash it. So that's the word, that's the proof of the hadith, very good was asked. And it's important that you understand the proofs and why it's a proof. طيب. The Mu'allif rahimahullah ta'ala, he says, وَوَاجِبُهُ التَّسْمِيَةُ مَعَ الذِّكْرِ. He says, and from the obligations of also, he says, and it's obligatory that a person says Bismillah, if he remembers. And there's a difference of opinion regarding this. Some of the scholars say you don't say Bismillah. It might be, it's not an obligation. But I can move on now. وَنَوَاقِضُهُ ثَمَانِيَةٌ. And now we move on.
No, so it says here the wajibat or wajibuhu. So do you know the furud, we call that pillars then? Because this one is...
You can also call it pillars. Nah, it is basically, in other words, it's something that if it's missing, the wudu is not accepted. Yeah, so you can call it, but it needs pillars in effect. They call this one wajib. Nah. طيب. Farad is something that's obligatory. That's all it really is.
And wajib?
Wajib is an obligation, but wajib and arkan, pillars and obligation, there's differences between them. And we're going to go into that. There's a big difference between them. In terms of, there's a lot of good details we're going to discuss, inshallah, between an obligation and a pillar. But farad over here, it's just something that it's like some of them Shafi said, furud over here, you need to refer to wajibat. That's why I call it wajibat. No. And then he says, well, wajib, which kind of makes it a little bit strange because he mentioned wajib again.
My question is that if basically, so is there a different hukum on if I miss one of them out, like compared to the other one?
No, so in the Salaah, for example, we have this book is called the Salaah to Arkan wa Wajibat. The Salaah has Arkan, it has Wajibat. If you miss a rukn in the Salaah, the ruling pertaining what you're supposed to do can be very different to if you miss a Wajib. Yeah, no, that's inshallah. I'm going to come back.
What do you mean by ma'a dhikri? Is it just say it aloud?
No, ma'a dhikri means when he remembers.
Oh.
Ma'a dhikri when he remembers. So he's saying tasmiyah to ma'a dhikri. And this shows he himself is saying if a person forgets to do so, it's not really an issue. And that's why him calling it wajib it might not be the right thing to Allah. طيب. ونواقضه ثمانية. Then he moves on to the nawaqid. The nawaqid are the nullifiers of the wudu. That which nullifies the wudu. And the Mu'allif he mentions 8. Not all 8 of them actually break the wudu. So what we're going to do inshallah ta'ala, I'm going to mention each one, talk about it slightly and mention if it does break the wudu, if it doesn't. And some I might mention some ahadith pertaining to some of them, and some of them I might just go over. So the first of them is Al-Kharij min as-Sabilayn. Al-Kharij min as-Sabilayn is referring to that which comes out of the private parts. That which comes out of the private parts. And note, the author, he didn't say al-bawl wal-gha'id. He didn't say urine and feces. But he said anything that leaves the private parts. And there's an agreement amongst the scholars that if it's bawl or if it's urine or if it's feces, automatically it's going to break the wudu. That's something that everybody agrees with. Like in the author, he's not limiting it to that, but he's saying anything, even the thing that comes out of you, let's say somebody's sick and he has a rock coming out of his private parts, or he has something that is tahir coming out of his private parts, he says that this person's wudu is broken. And some of the reasons for this is we find that there are certain scenarios within the religion whereby something that wasn't bowl, nor was it hard, nor was it urine, nor was it feces, had come out of a person's private part, and it had called, and the Prophet ﷺ either commanded them to make wudu or clarified to us that that person is in a state of al-hadith. So an example of that would be the hadith that I mentioned not long ago, where a woman came to the Prophet ﷺ and she was complaining about the menstrual cycle, and she was saying that she had blood coming out of her outside of the normal period, outside of her normal period would normally come out. The Prophet ﷺ, what did he say to her? He said to her, "Tawadda'i li kulli salati." He said, make wudu for every single prayer. So the blood that was coming out of her is not considered from her normal period. It is also not considered from urine. It's also not considered from feces. However, the Prophet ﷺ, he told her to make wudu for every salah. That's one scenario. Another scenario is, so in the religion we have that which is known as al-mani, which is semen, and there's that which is known, and that basically comes out of a man. You also have al-madi, which is pre-ejaculation fluid, I think. That might be the best way to translate it. And al-madi, a person needs to do wudu when it comes out of it. So this shows this is another thing that is considered tahir. It's not considered impure, but if it comes out of you, you have to do wudu. So based on this, they might have done qiyas where they've compared anything that comes out of your body from the two passages, from the private part, they are all considered. I mean, everything will cause you to, it will cause the break of wudu. Now, طيب. The next one, the Mu'allif rahimahullah ta'ala, he says, Al-Kharij al-Fahish al-Najis min al-Jasad. Al-Kharij al-Fahish al-Najis min al-Jasad. Something that leaves the body that is impure and that is foul. Something that leaves the body that is impure and that is foul. So something like, let's say for example, somebody pukes up, or somebody, has a cut and there's a lot of pus coming out, or somebody is bleeding and there's a lot of blood coming out. He's referring to these kind of scenarios of something that is foul. However, at this particular point, there isn't any clear-cut proof from the Sunnah that shows that this breaks your wudu. And because of that, even though the Mu'allif had mentioned it, I would say drop beside it. There isn't any clear-cut evidence showing us that this will break your wudu now.
You say the two examples though, for the last one, the relevant to this second condition.
Oh, when I said the two examples,
Yeah.
so I said, for example,
the blood, the woman, she had blood coming out.
not the woman anyway. So for example, let's say somebody, in the past, when people like when the Muslims age ago were in battles, sometimes somebody would have a wound where a lot of blood's coming out. So this would be considered foul, and it would be. So let's say in this kind of scenario, this scenario. This is one of the scenarios. Yeah. Another one of the scenarios is, let's say somebody pukes or has pus coming out, or something that, in the customs of the people, is coming out of his body that is foul and that is impure. There isn't any clear evidence that shows that this will break somebody's wudu. There's basically one hadith that we lean upon, but it's not clear evidence now. Moving on to the next naqid, or the next nullifier from the nullifiers of the wudu. It is zawal al-aql. Zawal al-aql. Zawal al-aql is referring to somebody losing his consciousness. Somebody losing his consciousness. And regarding this issue, there is no khilaf, there's no difference of opinion that if somebody loses his consciousness, it breaks his wudu. If somebody goes to sleep, if somebody faints, if somebody goes crazy, all of these different scenarios where somebody loses their consciousness, this automatically will break a person's wudu because he won't know that which is coming out. He won't know. No. Al-Khamr, I've not heard people be adding that one on, but I'll get back to you later on, so I don't want to say yes or no. The next one is مس المرأة بالشهوة. مس المرأة بشهوة. مس المرأة بشهوة. Touching a woman whilst being stimulated sexually, so whilst desiring her. So whilst with desire, touching a woman with desire. So now, regarding this issue, there's 3 points. Point number 1 is, Some of the mashayikh and the scholars, they see that if you touch a woman, it automatically breaks your wudu. And this is the madhab of the Shafi'iyya. This is the madhab, or the school of thought of Mohammed ibn Idris al-Shafi'i. So a lot of people, for example, from my home country in Somalia, when I went there a long time ago, I was surprised to find that maybe somebody feels like he's touched a woman on the street, he'll be like, oh, she broke my wudu. So this is that opinion. There's another opinion that says, if a person touches a woman whilst desiring her, then this breaks the wudu. And then there's another third opinion, which is no, the only thing that actually breaks a person's wudu and breaks his ghusl as well and causes him to go into a state of al-hadath is whereby he engages in sexual intercourse with a woman. And this all goes back to the ayah whereby Allah Jalla wa Ala, he says, oh, la mastum nisa. La mastum nisa. So la mastum nisa over here, in another, that's the way that we read it in Hafs and Asim, which is the normal way that people read Quran. However, in some of the other recitations or modes of the Quran, it says lamastum nisa, which lamasat means touch. So this is where some of them get touching from. Now, Ibn Abbas radiallahu anhu, he says over here, and very better one, before we even get to what he said, the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, he made dua for Ibn Abbas, for those who don't know him. He asked Allah to give him knowledge of the deen. Allahumma faqih fi deen wa allimhu ta'wil. Allah give him fiqh of the religion. And also teach him the ta'wil, which is the commentary or the exegesis of the Quran. And Ibn Abbas radiallahu anhu, he has an opinion regarding la muslim, and he says it is referring to al-jima', it's referring to sexual intercourse. And this is why you will find a lot of the scholars today, they lean towards that opinion. Lamas or la muslim, in all these scenarios, it is referring to al-jima', which is sexual intercourse. And somebody touching a woman, that does not break a person's wudu. We also have scenarios where the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, he touched his wife Aisha, and he went and prayed an end of the wudu. And this is a clear-cut evidence for us that touching a female does not break your wudu now. So that,
So when they say touching a woman, for example, the Shafi'iyya, do they mean touching a woman without a barrier, so skin-to-skin contact? Or does that mean even like if you touch her clothes, that's their opinion?
I think they mean touching skin to skin. That's what I think. Yeah, that's what I think. I think it's skin to skin now. Because touching also wouldn't really be touching unless you touch the person directly skin to skin. Wow, I've never thought about that. No, لا إشكال. هذه أسئلة طيب. Okay, نعم. So the next one is ومس الفرج باليد. ومس الفرج باليد. And touching the private parts with your hands. Touching your private parts with your hands is an issue that there's a strong difference of opinion as well. Because the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, he says in a hadith, من مس ذكره فليتوضأ. Whoever touches his private parts, then let him move. This is a hadith. And based on this hadith, a lot of the scholars, and for example, Shaykh Salaah, other than him, they say that if a person touches his private parts, automatically his wudu is broken. And this is probably the opinion or the hadith that the Mu'allif rahimahullah ta'ala that he used over here, that the author he used. Lakin, there's another hadith whereby Talq ibn Ali, he came to the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam about a person touching his private parts for Salaah, or when he wants to pray or in the prayer. And the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, he says, لا إنما هو بضعة منك. He was asking about having to wudu, touching your private parts. And he said, no, it's only a body part, it's only one of your body parts. So these two hadiths, it seems like they kind of go against each other. So some of the scholars, they say, this, Shaykh ibn Baz, for example, he said, one hadith is abrogated and the other one is not. But Shaykh ibn Uthaymeen, rahimahullah ta'ala, he brings the two hadiths together. And he says, what is intended over here is if somebody touches his private parts, in a way where he's, doing it in a desirable manner, where he's playing around with himself. Does that make sense? In a sexual way. So he says, this is when the wudu will be nullified. Other than that, somebody just touches his private parts and accidentally touches his private parts, then this will not break a person's wudu now. Now moving on to the next nullified from the nullifiers of the wudu. The Mu'allif rahimahullah ta'ala, he says, وَأَكْلُ لَحْمِ الْجُزُورِ. He moves on to talking about eating cow meat. And this one is very simple, even though there might be a difference of opinion, it is from the nullifiers of the wudu. The Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, he says, تَوَضَّأُوا من أكل لحوم الإبل أو توضأوا something along those lines. توضأوا من أكل لحوم الإبل, or let me just double check what the actual hadith was. He says, basically he says, do wudu when you eat camel meat, and he didn't say this about the types of meats. Then the Mu'allif rahimahullah ta'ala, he mentions وَتَغْسِيلُ الْمَيِّتِ. He mentions washing a dead body. He's saying that when you wash a dead body, this will break a person's wudu. Like in this particular point as well, there isn't any clear evidence that shows that it breaks your wudu. Some of the scholars, what they say is they say that it's best for a person to do wudu after he's washed a dead body. So they say it is something that a person, it's good for him to do, but there's no clear evidence showing that he has to do it. And the final one is al-riddatu an al-Islam, is whereby a person, he leaves the fold of Islam. أعاذنا الله من ذلك. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to protect us from that. And why is somebody leaving the fold of Islam? Why does that cause somebody to, why would that cause somebody's wudu to be broken? It's because Allah Jalla wa Ala, what did He tell us? Anybody that leaves the fold, anybody that's a kafir, all of his actions, they destroy them in vain. And because of that, the wudu is from that, the ibadat lights from the actions, and that one will also be in vain, it will be destroyed. So these are the nawaqid. Any questions? Is everyone tired of carry on? Carry on, yeah? We can. Come from them.
I was just going to ask about the bid, but I'll ask later.
You going to ask?
About the bid, I'll ask later.
No, probably not.
So is my bid considered thin, or is it, because I've heard that once if you can see the skin, that's considered
Thin, yeah.
thin.
Yeah, that's basically what they use. So they say if you can see the skin, you can see the skin. Somebody looks at your bid and you can see the skin. Then that means your bid isn't thick. There's obviously going to be scenarios where it's in the middle. So it might be, you'll probably be on the safe side to try to get the water in there. No.
Do you know, in regards to difference of opinion,
No.
if you choose to pick one opinion other than the other one, would they both be right then?
No, so what you're supposed to do in religion is you're supposed to try to follow the proof in all scenarios. Allah Jalla wa Ala, the Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, he tells us, وَأَطِيعُ اللَّهَ وَأَطِيعُ الرَّسُولَ. Obey Allah and obey His Messenger. So in all scenarios, especially if you're trying to seek knowledge and you're trying to be a talib of ilm, you have to always strive towards trying to follow the Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. In some scenarios it might not be possible because you might not have the capabilities to be able to differentiate between the evidences that are being put forth. Like it should be a goal that you always strive towards that. No, that's what I would say. So for example, the reason why I said some of these opinions might not be strong was because there isn't an evidence for it. Right? And that's the way that a person, that's the methodology that a person should follow. However, when somebody is studying fiqh, which is a science of fiqh, there's a lot of difference of opinion in many issues. Obviously there are many issues that obviously everybody agrees upon. Like there are issues in the fiqh where there's a big difference. And there's space for differing in the sense that if somebody differs with another person, it doesn't mean that this person is misguided or this person isn't misguided. There's that space for the different because they've understood the evidence in different ways. Like I would advise that a person, when he starts embarking on the journey of studying fiqh, that he follows, for example, either whatever his teacher's teaching, or he follows maybe a madhab or school of thought. And there's no harm in that. But then as the proofs and evidence become clear to him, let's say he's studying Abu Shuja, which is a book in the Shafi'i madhab, which the Somalis they teach sometimes. I don't really follow the Shafi'i madhab. I'm more of a Hanbali because that's what I studied when I was in Saudi. Then there's no harm in somebody studying a Hanbali book and following it, and even acting upon it until he comes across, evidence that go against, what he's learned. For example, clearly, and he should follow the truth. And it's better, for example, what people usually do in the West, which is quite common, is they try to follow the opinions of the scholars regarding issues. So they'll go back to the fatwas or the Islamic verdicts that the scholars of our time, what they put forth to the people. That's more common, I would say, amongst the people in the UK, unless people disagree. So there's like a group of scholars in Saudi, they're called Lajnat al-Da'ima, and they've got a lot of books of fatwa, Islamic verdicts, and people just usually try to follow them. Because it's a group of scholars that all discuss this issue in depth. and they came to a particular ruling now. Right. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, that's
Or did I go around in circles? Right. Okay. We'll go on for another 15-20 minutes inshallah. We'll finish. Right. So الشرط الخامس المؤلف رحمه الله تعالى, he moves on to mentioning the fifth condition. And the fifth condition is إزالة النجاسة, is the removal of impurities. So we discussed الطهارة, or purification, is the uplifting of ritual impurity, رفع الحدث, وما في معناه, and that which resembles it, وزوال الحدث, and removing impurities. So now we're on the last part of the definition of tahara. So this is the fifth condition from the conditions of the salah. So we finished with now. The author is إزالة النجاسة, removing impurities. So there are three types of impurities. There are three places where impurity is removed from. So it's إزالة النجاسة من ثلاث, removing impurities from three. من البدن والثوب والبقعة, removing it from the body, from the garments, and also from the place where the person is praying. والدليل قوله تعالى وثيابك فطهر, and your garments purify them. So there is no difference, in all the scholars they agree that when it comes to the removal of impurities, there are three places where you must remove it from when you are praying. The first of them is your garments. You cannot pray whilst having garments where there is impurities on it. Let's say, for example, there's dog dropping or something like that, and it's on your clothes, or you stepped on it and you're wearing, for example, shoes, and you're praying with those shoes on. Your salah will not be accepted if you know this. Another place that you need to remove the impurities from is your skin. It's your skin. So if it's on your hand, for example, you need to remove it from your hand. If it's on your face, you need to remove it from your face. And the final place is the place that you're praying, where you're putting your hands down in sujood. That little area that you're praying on, it has to be tahir. However, let's say, beside you, like half a meter next to you, let's say there's impurities right there, that doesn't harm you, because you're not praying there. That's right next to you. So the buq'a is referring to the place that you were praying. There's a hadith where the Prophet ﷺ, he led the companions in prayer. And while he was praying, he removed the footwear that he was wearing. He removed it. And the companions, from some of the narrations, they removed it as well, just to copy it. And then they asked him, why did you do this? And he said, Jibreel alayhi salam, he came to me and informed me about impurities that were on my shoes, or on the footwear that I was wearing. Now, what can be understood from this hadith is that إزالة النجاسة, removing impurities. If you don't know that you have impurity on your garments, on your skin, or in the place that you are praying, and you finish that prayer, your salah is valid. That's one thing that can be deducted. Another thing that can be deducted is during the prayer, if you realize that you've got an impurity on you, then you must remove it, if you're capable of doing so. For example, if somebody is wearing a shimal, or some others call it a shimal, or this kind of thing, and it's on, and you find out that while you're praying you've got impurities on there, you need to take it off and carry on praying. Just the same way the Prophet ﷺ took off that which was impure. However, if you already know, actually before we move on to that one, let's say the impurity is on a garment that you can't remove. So let's say the garment is covering your awrah, and you can't remove that garment. In that scenario, you have to stop the salah and leave it. And then change your clothes and then come back and carry on. And if you know that you have impurities on you before you pray, then your salah will not be accepted. These are things that are specific to Izalah to Najasa, and I want people to write this down, it's very important. When it comes to Raf'a al-Hadith, uplifting hadith, if you find out during the prayer that you don't have wudu, your salah is automatically not accepted. Even if you finish the salah, and you find out after you finish the prayer that you don't have wudu, your salah is not accepted. You have to repeat the salah. But for Izalah to Najasa, removing impurities, it's slightly different. Now, we'll move on to the next condition. The next condition is الشرط السادس is ستر العورة. It is covering the awrah. Covering the awrah. أجمع أهل العلم على فساد صلاة من صلى عريانا وهو يقدر. The scholars, they unanimously agreed upon the invalidity of the salah. Sorry, they've all agreed on فساد صلاة من صلى عريانا. They've agreed upon the person who prays without being covered properly, that his salah is invalid whilst he's capable of doing so. So if there's a person, he's capable of covering his awrah and he prays naked, his salah is invalid. So this is what the author is saying. وَحَدُّ عَوْرَةِ الرَّجُلِ, and the boundaries of the awrah of the man is مِنَ السُّرَّةِ إِلَى الرُّكْبَةِ, is from the surah, from the belly button all the way down to the knee, or from the navel down to the knee. وَالْأَمَةُ كَذَلِكَ, and the slave girl, the slave woman is similar to the man. وَالْحُرَّةُ كُلُّهَا عَوْرَةٌ إِلَّا وَجْهَهَا فِي الصَّلَاةِ, and al-hurra, which is the free woman, all of her is considered awrah except for her face in the salah, except for her face in the salah, except for her face in the salah. والدليل قوله تعالى, and the proof of this is يا بني آدم خذوا زينتكم عند كل مسجد عند كل صلاة. O mankind, O the son of Adam, take your adornments to every single mosque, and what that means is عند كل صلاة, at the time of every prayer. So it's referring to every prayer. Now, so over here we're referring to Satr al-Awrah, which is an important issue. Satr al-Awrah is the part of the body that the person is supposed to cover, and he's talking about during the salah over here. So for the man, it's from the navel down to the knee. And this is something that most people already know. He says for an amma, which would be like a slave girl or a slave woman, he said it's similar to a male. And then for a normal woman, he said it's all of her is awrah except for her face. He says everything except for her face is considered awrah. But the correct opinion is everything except for her face and also her hands. The correct opinion is everything except for her face and her hands. Her hands are also not considered to be awrah, for some evidence. Now, some people ask about the feet. The feet, they are considered to be from the awrah for the woman as well. Now the author, he mentions an ayah over here. He says, يَا بَنِي آدَمَ خُذُوا زِينَتَكُمْ, O the son of Adam, take your adornments to every single masjid. In the Qur'an. So, how is this an evidence for what we're talking about? What is meant by أخذي الزينة, or taking your adornments, is covering your awrah. And also, on top of that, if you want to beautify yourself as well, that's even better. Because you should beautify yourself for the salat. But what comes under that is covering your awrah, as the scholars they say. And they said it's not specific to the masjid, like in عند كل صلاة. What is meant by this is at the time of every prayer. It's not only when you go to the masjid that the person is supposed to cover his awrah and cover his adornments, but whenever he's praying the salah, this is something that the person is supposed to do. Moving on to the next condition. Any questions?
Question. If someone finds that there's a hole in their clothes while they're praying and that shows the awrah, is it similar to the najasa?
So if you can't, for example, it depends. So it's not similar to the najasa. So if somebody, for example, let's say there's a big hole on his clothes and you can see a part of his, his buttocks or something like that, then, and he didn't realize that, in this scenario his salah will not be accepted because he hasn't come with that condition. That condition that I mentioned about izalat najasa is specific to that one.
Specific. Yeah.
It's specific. But then let's say a part of his awrah shows like his knee or something like that, or like just a bit of his knee, where he can cover it, and it's only for a short period of time, then there's no harm in covering it. But like if it's a big hole that you can't do anything about, and it's showing part of the awrah and you can't cover it, then it's a different story.
I just meant like if there was a rip in someone's throat.
Then can you cover it?
Yeah.
If it's depends. If you say if it's a short period of time and you can quickly cover it, then they say like if it's something that he didn't know, he's praying with it and he had a hole, then there's a long period of time that his awrah was shown. So it's different. But let me get back to you regarding the ins and outs of that, inshallah. Any other questions?
So, for the man, the awrah is from the navel to the knees, right? So that means the shoulders are not awrah. So if you were to wear a vest and pray, would that be okay? Or?
Yes, that's a different issue. So we're talking about having to put something on your shoulder. That's a separate issue. That's not considered awrah. That's something that, this hadith that says you have to cover one of your shoulders, right? Like, and that isn't considered part of the awrah. It's not considered part of the awrah. Does that make sense? They're two different things. One's talking about what you have to do during the prayer, the other one's talking about awrah. No. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
question about the clothes being pure.
نعم.
So the leader that Mohammed said, رحمه الله, is وثيابك فطهر.
نعم.
في الأصول الثلاثة he says وثيابك فطهر أي طهر عملك من الشرك.
Yes.
معناه one دليل can you take is he taking like multiple things out of it in different sciences?
Yeah, so even though he said that, one of the shuruf I was going to say, you can use it for this one, to use it for so we finished the Satra. Okay, we've got 3 more left, inshallah ta'ala. Okay, so then the Mu'allif rahimahullah ta'ala, he moves on to say, الشرط السابع, he says, the next condition, the 7th condition is دخول الوقت, is the entry of the time. والدليل من السنة, and the proof from the sunnah is حديث جبريل عليه السلام, is the hadith of جبريل عليه السلام. أنه أمر النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم في أول الوقت. He led the Prophet صلى الله عليه وسلم in prayer في أول الوقت, in the beginning time. وفي آخره, and at the end time. ثم قال, then he said, يا محمد, O Muhammad, الصلاة ما بين هذين الوقتين. He said, الصلاة is that which is in between these 2 times. وقوله تعالى, and his speech تعالى, إن الصلاة كانت على المؤمنين كتابا موقوتا. Verily the salah is upon the believers decreed on specific times. It is something that has been decreed upon the believers at specific times. A mafruḍa, a obligations fil awqat, a obligations in times. With the little awqat, and the proof for the times is قوله تعالى أقم الصلاة لدلوك الشمس إلى غسق الليل. Establish the prayer لدلوك الشمس, which is slightly after midday, إلى غسق الليل, until the darkness of the night. وقرآن الفجر, and the Qur'an al-Fajr. إن قرآن الفجر كان مشهودا. Verily the Qur'an of al-Fajr is something that is ever witnessed. Now, so this is the 7th condition from the conditions of the Salah. This one, or this particular condition, is a condition now this particular condition, it talks about the time frames of the Salah. It talks about that the Salah has different times. And the Mu'allif rahimahullah ta'ala, the first evidence that he brought forth was the evidence where he said that Jibreel alayhi salam, he came to the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam and he led him in prayer at the beginning time, and then he led him in prayer again at the end time for every Salah. And this was to teach the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam that the Salah, it has time frames that needs to be done within. And this was after the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam was raised, above the heavens, whereby the Salah was made obligatory. And this all occurred in the well-known story of Al-Isra wal-Mi'raj. This is when the Salah was made obligatory. Now, when Jibreel alayhi salam came to him, he came to him at the beginning time and the end time. So what are the beginning times and the end times for every Salah? So we have Salat al-Fajr. Salat al-Fajr, the beginning time is Dhulu al-Fajr. The Dhulu al-Fajr is when the Fajr comes. And the way that we know that the Fajr has come is there is a thin white line in the horizon that you will see when the Fajr has entered. There is a thin white line that you see at the horizon when the Fajr has entered. And this is how we know that the Fajr has entered. Before that, there is something known as the Fajr al-Kadhib, which is light that you will see before this. And this is not the light of the Fajr. No. And it's not thin, it's not a thin line on the horizon, but rather the fake or the Kadhib Fajr, you will see it in the whole sky. It won't be a thin line at the bottom of the horizon. Now, and it ends at the time where the sun rises. This is the time frame for Fajr. The time frame for Dhuhr is min zawal al-shams, is when the sun, it leans towards the west. It leans towards the west. So we all know that the sun, it rises from the east and it sets in the west, right? So when the sun is in the middle of the sky and it slightly moves to the west, this is when Dhuhr comes in. And it ends when dhillu rajuli mithlay, when the shadow of a person is equivalent to double his size. When the shadow of a person is equivalent to double his size. So if you see that your shadow is double your height, then you know that the time of Asr has come in. But you have to also add on to this, which is this side point, is when it's midday, depending on how big your shadow is, it might be already like about 30 centimeters at midday. You have to also add that measurement on as well. So with that added onto your shadow doubling your height. This is, did I say doubling your height? Yeah. No, I said doubling your height. I made a mistake. Doubling your height. I mean, when it's the same size as you. I said that's completely incorrect. Everybody remember that. It's when it's the same size as you. Is that what you were going to say?
Yeah.
Yeah, I made a mistake. It is when it's the same size as you. It's not when it's doubling your height. Yeah, Salat al-Asr. When it's the same size as you, you have to also add on the size of your shadow at midday. So for example, depending on where you are in the world, if you're in the equator, it could be the case that you don't even see your shadow. You know, the more you go north and the more you go south, you might have a shadow that's a certain size. So that size of that shadow during the day added on to your height. That's when Salat al-Asr is. Now, it goes on until Maghrib. But the scholars, they say that there are two times for Asr. There's Waqt al-Ikhtiyar and there's Waqt al-Idrar. And Waqt al-Ikhtiyar is referring to the time frame of Asr, that is the chosen time frame or the elected time frame. And the Idrar is the time frame of necessity. So they say that the time frame of necessity, it starts as soon as the sun, you could start seeing it becoming, the brightness becomes a bit yellow. And some of the scholars, they say it is when your shadow is double your height. So this is where I made a mistake earlier. So when your shadow is double your height, obviously adding on the little part that you have to add on during midday, they say that, some scholars say that is when you enter into the time of necessity for Salat al-Asr. That's what some scholars say, but the more correct opinion is when the sky, يصفر الشمس, when it becomes zero. When the sky, or the sun becomes zero. Now, and they say that a person is not allowed to pray in Waqtul Idrar, except that he has a necessity or a proper reason and he's sinful. This is what some of the scholars they say. They say the person is sinful. And however, if he does pray within that time frame, his salah will still be considered ada. It means he still prayed within the time frame, but he will be sinful. However, if he prays after Maghrib, then he hasn't even prayed within the time frame, and it's qada, and it becomes qada. And just to give you a quick point, if somebody prays his salah outside of the time frame on purpose, without a legitimate reason, some of the scholars, they say this person doesn't need to redo his salah. Let's say it's a lot of time, you got lazy, you got task of time, you didn't pray for it. Most people will pray, right? A lot of the scholars, they say you shouldn't even pray that salah, because it will not be accepted from you. The Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, in the hadith of Aisha, he said, whoever innovates in this affair of ours, that which is not from it will be rejected from it. And you pray out in a different time, for no legitimate reason, this is you adding something to the religion which is not part of it. This is Shafi'i al-Adhim of that view. Now, so Asr's time, Waqt al-Ikhtiyar, is from the time that your shadow is your size up to the time where the sun becomes yellow. And then we go into Waqtul Idrar, the time of necessity, and that's all the way into Maghrib. Then you have Maghrib, which starts from sunset and it ends in the Ghiyabi al-Shafaq al-Ahmar, when the twilight or the red twilight comes to an end, which is the redness that you see in the sky after the sun. When all of that goes, then the time of Isha truly enters. That's the time that Isha enters. And Isha also has Waqt al-Ikhtiyar and Waqt al-Idrar, and it's Waqt al-Ikhtiyar is all the way until midnight, and Waqt al-Idrar will be after midnight until Fajr. Now, the author, rahimahullah ta'ala, he then mentions an ayah from the Quran where he says, إِنَّ الصَّلَاةَ كَانَتْ عَلَى الْمُؤْمِنِينَ كِتَابًا مَوْقُوتًا. Verily the salah is upon the believers at prescribed times. So kitab over here, if you know the Arabic language, the scholars, they see what is meant is maktool. It is the Isse maf'ul, that is what is intended by kitab over here. And what is intended is كتبها الله جل وعلا, كتب الصلاة, and كتبها الله جل وعلا في أوقات معلومة. Allah had prescribed these salahs at specific times. This is what is meant. Allah Jalla wa ala, He made upon the people salahs that He's obliged at particular times. This is what His ayah is saying. In the ayah, Allah Jalla wa ala, He says, حافظوا على الصلوات والصلاة الوسطى. Preserve the prayers and also the middle prayer. And also what? The middle prayer. The middle prayer over there is talking about Salatul Asr. Salatul Asr, the scholars say. Very back to the final point that the Maliki mentioned regarding this. He said وَدَلِيلُ الْأَوْقَاتِ. And we're going to end over here, inshallah, the word on the board. وَدَلِيلُ الْأَوْقَاتِ, the proof for the timings is the speech of Allah where He says, أَقِمِ الصَّلَاةَ لِدُلُوكِ الشَّمْسِ. This ayah is not proving that it's a condition from the conditions of the prayer. It's proving the different times for the salah. So you'll find certain hadith that clarify the different times of the prayer, but you'll also find it in an ayah, and this is the ayah. Allah Jalla wa Ala, He says, أَقِمِ الصَّلَاةَ لِدُلُوكِ الشَّمْسِ. Pray, establish the prayer, لِدُلُوكِ الشَّمْسِ. And the Duluki Shams is referring to when the sun goes past midday, slightly to the west. لِدُلُوكِ الشَّمْسِ إِلَىٰ غَسَقِ اللَّيْلِ, until the darkness of the night. And this encompasses Salatu al-Dhuhri wal-Asri wal-Maghrib wal-Isha. It encompasses Dhuhr, Asr, Maghrib and Isha. Because Dhuhr, Asr, Maghrib and Isha, all of these salat, they happen either between the Duluki Shams and between the Ghasaq al-Layl. Duluki Shams is as soon as the sun slightly goes past the midday, and the Ghasaq al-Layl is the dark night. All the salats happen within that time except one. And then He says, وَقُرْآنِ الْفَجْرِ, and the Qur'an of al-Fajr. And the Qur'an of al-Fajr is referring to the Salat al-Fajr. It's the reason why Allah said Qur'an al-Fajr is because in Salat al-Fajr, the person is supposed to read a lot of Qur'an. The Sunnah is that the Salat al-Fajr, that people, they long it out. And that's why it's called Qur'an al-Fajr. And it says, إِنَّ قُرْآنَ الْفَجْرِ كَانَ مَشْهُودًا. Verily the Qur'an of al-Fajr is ever witnessed. Now, so just to round up what we've covered today, we're going to leave the next two conditions, inshallah ta'ala, for next week. Today we've covered the fourth condition, which was Raf'u al-Hadathi. We discussed the 10 pillars of wudu. We discussed the obligations of the wudu. And we also discussed the evidences pertaining to that. We also discussed the nawaqid al-wudu, which is the nullifiers of the wudu. And then we moved on to talking about the fifth condition, which was removal of impurities. And then we moved on to the sixth condition, which was covering the awrah. And then now we just covered the seventh condition, which was what?
دخول الصلاة.
دخول الصلاة. We'll end it there, inshallah ta'ala. We've got two conditions left. And then we'll probably finish this book in two. I think we've got 2 more weeks in the week, inshallah ta'ala. And inshallah, maybe after that, if people want to split like a fifth book, we can move into a fifth book.
Do you know, some people say that Salat Dhuhr is the first Salah. Is this the evidence for that? Do you know this ayah?
Yeah, no, there's also other hadiths that clearly state, the first Salat in the and going starting to go. But this Salat al-Wusta one, that wouldn't be an evidence. Which one?
The first Salah is the Dhuhr, is considered the first Salah.
Yeah, it's considered the first Salah, yeah. Then what hadith were you saying?
I know the ayah,
oh, that one, yeah. You could, yeah, that could almost be a proof for it. There's also other hadiths as well, where the Prophet would start with the first Salah, and he called it the first Salah. But that could also be a proof now, because he started with that. Makes sense. Any other questions?
Do you know, in regard to the places that you can pray in Salah?
No.
For example, some jobs that have like multicultural prayer rooms, they have a cross and the Christ stuff in the background, but then there's a little section that's been cornered off for the Muslims to pray. Would you still be allowed to pray in that area that's been cornered off?
So if the area's been cornered off, and it's not part of the, so like it's kind of separate, and it's got its barriers and stuff like that, then there are...
It's like the barriers, I don't know, for example, probably like just a normal person's height just covers it. It's not like a whole wall barrier, just like a little section.
It's like a separate place, isn't it?
Yeah.
So they've separated it. So as long as they've separated it, and there's no like cross there or anything like that.
Okay.
Inshallah, it should go right.
And is there a khilaf on the ending time of the Salat al-Isha?
Yeah, so even in the Hanbali madhab, you've got two views. Some of them say it's after the first third of the night, and some say it's after the halfway through the night. And the way you calculate halfway through the night isn't just 12 o'clock. You look at the time that Maghrib comes in, you look at the time that Fajr comes in, and you divide it into two. I'm not saying you calculate the last third of the night, the first third of the night, and all the rest. No.
Is that a daruri? Is that not the daruri time?
No, they base it on the Daruri. So the Ikhtiyari, they say it's, some people say it's the first third,
First thing.
and some say it's the half.
No.
And
No.
so depending on which end of view they use, we're going to more apparent view, the more well-known one is the half of the night.
So there's Daruri and there's Ikhtiyari.
Even for Isha now.
So with the Salah, with the Ikhtiyari, and that's the time that you're meant to pray in. And then Daruri is the time where if you don't pray in that time, you still have to pray it, but you're sinful. How meant?
Yeah, so some of the scholars, they say you're sinful for not praying at that time, for leaving it until that time, and that's only for the two salahs that we mentioned, for Salatul Asri and Salatul Isha. And they say that you should be praying before Isfar al-Shams, before the sun becomes bright yellow. No.
So
There's evidences for, for this, saying that that's time enough to pray before. But I think they still say that even if somebody prays after that, he's praying within the time frame, but it's within the time frame after, because Maghrib hasn't still come.
okay, so for example with the Isha, then the time where you'd actually fully miss the prayer is after the Fajr comes.
That's when, even if you pray, it's not called to there's something like that within the time frame. Yeah, that's when you have prayed outside of the Isha time. But then you're still, they say you're still simply love the scholars. Some don't say, some say it's makruh for praying after, praying at the waqt al-idrar, the time of necessity now.
So the ulama talk about ترك الصلاة متعمدا. Do they mean تركها بعد الصلاة بعد الوقت الاضطرار?
When they place the rulings of kufr and things like that.
Yeah, so that's like when the salah is fully gone out of the window.
That's when somebody abandons the salah. Abandons the salah. Somebody abandons the salah. Or he doesn't pray hardly, or he prays like once. This is a lot of the salahs. You wouldn't, if somebody delays it, we're not going to automatically start saying this person did his salah, is disbelief.
In regards to someone that travels, showing the salah or combining Dhuhr and Asr, what are the conditions on that in terms of travelling?
No, as long as somebody's a musafir, as long as he's a traveller, he can pray the salahs in short. If anything, he should pray the salahs in short. This is what he needs to do. Because the salah initially came as 2 and 2, and then it was made, it was kept that way in travelling, but then within the cities you have to pray it through. So there's a difference of opinion regarding should we combine them. What is it better to combine them? However, praying 2 rak'ahs, for example, the ones that are 4 rak'ahs, is knocking down to 2, that's what you should do. You should do that. Combining them on the other hand, is it better, is it not? There's a difference of opinion. No. Any other questions?
What does it mean by وَضْرِبُهُ or وَضْرِبُهُ in the hadith where when the child reaches the age of 7 and then you teach him how to pray?
وَضْرِبُهُ لِعَشْرٍ. Yeah. So, وَضْرِبُهُ عَلَيْهَا لِعَشْرٍ. That's the hadith. So, basically you need to discipline them and for them to pray. So you don't allow, you literally force them to not pray. You're using your power to make them pray now. Not by to make them kind of force them to pray now. It doesn't mean you go and, it doesn't mean go and start boxing them, for example. It doesn't mean that. You have to discipline. It doesn't mean just allow them to, you have to force them to do it by whatever means.
Is the person sinful for not disciplining them?
Yeah, because if you've been commanded to by the Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, and the person, if he's not disciplining them, he's not following the command of the Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. Any other questions? Okay. Inshallah ta'ala, next, when we finish the book, I might do a little test, inshallah ta'ala, just see what people are at. Is the class, do you feel like the class is easy or, is it? Good pace, yeah? Yes. We'll stop there, inshallah.